Tonight, a repeat offender who allegedly set a woman on fire at a Loop CTA station faces federal terrorism charges. Pope Leo XIV receives two prominent Illinoisans, Governor Pritzker and a top official with the White Sox. What they told the leader of the Catholic Church. The bill to release the Epstein files is now on the president's desk. Let the political spinning and posturing begin. And why African American women face more complications in childbirth than other groups, and what can be done about it. Welcome to the Chicago Report. I'm Schutz. The federal government steps in today in the case of a repeat criminal offender who was out on the street and allegedly set a woman on fire at a CTA station in the Loop. Now, Lawrence Reed is charged with one count of committing a terrorist act for the incident that occurred on Monday night. Now, U.S. Attorney Andrew Boutros mentioned the fact that Reed had been arrested multiple times and believes he should have never been out on the street.
This is an individual with a very long and extensive criminal history on the state side. These are incredibly serious charges, and this is a case that now needs to be handled federally. This particular charge carries with it a life sentence, and if death were to happen to the victim, and obviously we pray and hope it does not, this would be a death-eligible case.
Now, this investigation is jointly being handled by the Federal Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division. Special Agent in charge Chris Ammon says the victim in this case is in critical condition.
The victim in this case is in critical condition, and our prayers are with her, her family, and everyone who is affected by this unimaginable tragedy. As the charges make clear today, violence of any kind on the CTA rail system or in our city is unacceptable and will continue to be met with the full force of the ATF, our law enforcement partners, and the United States Attorney's Office.
Now, Ammon says the Chicago Police Department worked quickly to detain the suspect, and CPD issued this statement today, quote, "As we do in all investigations, our hardworking Chicago Police Department members immediately responded and worked to apprehend this violent offender so he could not harm anyone else. Our police officers and detectives identified the offender and took him into custody in less than 24 hours. Their quick response is proof that the heinous acts of violence like this will never be tolerated in our city. The men and women of CPD will always do everything within our power to hold violent offenders accountable," end quote. It raises some questions as to what motivated the Department of Justice to take on this case, as this is something typically reserved for local law enforcement officials like Chicago Police Department and the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. We are also told that the suspect here will undergo mental health screening as well. On a lighter note today, Pope Leo XIV meets with two prominent Illinoisans at the Vatican. Governor Pritzker and his wife MK met the pontiff to talk about the conditions on the ground during Operation Midway Blitz. Pritzker's office says the Pope expressed relief that the operations had at least temporarily ramped down, and gratitude at Chicagoans who stood up for any human rights abuses. And then it was time for the gifts. First Lady presented the Pope with a drawing from an inmate at Logan Correctional Facility downstate, a few books on Illinois history, and of course a 4-pack of Da Pope beer brewed here by Burning Bush Brewery. Governor then offered out an invite
to come to Chicago.
Oh, thank you very much.
From me and from my wife, and we look forward to welcoming you sometime.
Now, this meeting was brokered by Chicago Archbishop Cardinal Blaise Cupich, and it comes as Pope Leo has been more outspoken about the immigration enforcement operations in the United States, telling reporters he understands the nation has to enforce immigration laws, but he believes it should be done in a humane way, especially when it involves people who have been productive members of the community.
We have to look for ways of treating people humanely, treating people with the dignity that they have. If people are in the United States illegally, there are ways to treat that. There are courts. There's a system of justice. I think there are a lot of problems in the system. No one has said that the United States should have open borders. I think every country has a right to determine who and how and when people enter. But when people are living good lives, and many of them for 10, 15, 20 years, to treat them in a way that is extremely disrespectful, to say the least, and there's been some violence, unfortunately, I think that the bishops have been very clear in what they've said, and I think that I would just invite all people in the United States to listen to them.
And Pritzker wasn't the only Chicago area figure that met with the Pope. That is White Sox shareholder and future owner meeting with the Pope and giving him a signed White Sox jersey featuring the signatures of some of the 2005 World Series White Sox members. And that is Justin Ishbia, who is going to take over the White Sox in a deal he struck with Jerry Reinsdorf for the next few years. He traveled there. Coincidentally, this was not in coordination with the governor's office, but it happened on the same day. Ishbia invited the Pope to throw out the first pitch at a brand new White Sox ballpark, whenever or wherever that happens. And a spokesperson for Ishbia says he is into the idea. And as we just revealed on Chicago Sports Tonight with Lou Canella, sources tell me that the White Sox are still actively exploring the 78, which is bordered by Roosevelt and Clark near the South Loop, as a potential site, even though the Chicago Fire have already announced plans to build their stadium there. But the White Sox are looking at building 2 stadiums on that site. The Fire's spokespeople have expressed openness to that idea in the past, and there could be lawmakers on board with this, including the real estate company that owns that parcel of land related Midwest. We will have more on that later this week. And now moving on to the bill to release the Epstein documents. It's on President Trump's desk right now. He has said recently he would sign it. It passed via unanimous consent in the House and Senate. And earlier today, each side trying to spin this as bad news for the opposing party. Here's Illinois Congressman Mike Quigley talking about it from Chicago Now.
I think the members are happy that this has finally taken place. But I think more importantly, I was at a vigil late yesterday with the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. And in the final analysis, this is their victory. It comes far too late for most, and particularly many. We've had someone who committed suicide because of this, and many others who face devastating health and mental health issues. So I was very happy for them. I know that it seemed bittersweet that it finally took place, and the sacrifice that they made, testifying at various times in court and before Congress on this matter. But look, it's tough. I think the worst part of it, the saga through Congress, is that, as you said, the president was against this release. Speaker Johnson did everything he possibly could to aid the president in slowing or stopping the release. They let us loose early in August for recess because they wanted to slow the discharge petition. The deciding vote, Speaker Johnson refused to swear Ms. Grijalva in. And finally, when she was brought back, it forced the issue because there were just enough Republicans willing to stand up against the monster Jeffrey Epstein to get these documents released and sign a discharge petition.
So can we dive into why the president changed his mind?
He saw the handwriting on the wall. He doesn't like losing, certainly doesn't like losing publicly. He could count noses, and despite his best efforts, I mean, they were publicly, horribly criticizing the Republicans who had come out, signed the discharge petition, and those who said they would vote yes. But those Republicans stood up to the president, I would say for the first time, and said they would vote yes. So rather than have a public failure, the president went along with this, which made it easier to have a near unanimous vote. That doesn't mean these documents will be released. My concern right now is this is an administration that has flaunted the rule of law for some time. I still think that there's real concerns with the redaction, with the refusal to release all the documents, or to simply say, well, there's an investigation, we're not going to release any of them. So I think that public pressure needs to continue.
Yeah, because there's really no telling what these documents are going to look like, what's going to be in them, because there's a 30-day window for the DOJ to get the ball rolling. Before we kind of dive into what these documents might look like, can you comment on how you and other Democrats are reacting? Because you kind of alluded to these Republicans finally standing up to President Trump. I know the names that have been most thrown around are Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene. What has it been like for you and the other Democrats to see them kind of break with their previous loyalty to the president to kind of go against him on this particular issue?
Yeah, we've seen this in President Trump's first term with votes like impeachment. What we learned from moderate Republicans who would occasionally disagree with the president is that they were forced out. You saw what happened to Illinois' own Adam Kinzinger, right? When Republicans were willing to stand up, I think, for what's right over the party, what's right for the country, for what's right for President Trump, most of them felt like they had to leave, or they were pressured out, or they were primaried and beaten. So we'll see what happens this time. I think the issue is more pressing. I think it's appropriate for people to vote what their conscience tells them, and obviously it's a much different time. This is a president like none other who has zero tolerance for dissent. But I'd like to think that those members recognize that working with Democrats and trying to get a compromise to avoid another government shutdown, just as one example, that's the right thing to do.
Okay, so talking about these documents, Anthony mentioned how we can't really know exactly what's inside, you know, the infamous list. Are we talking about receipts? Are we talking about travel itineraries? Like, have you heard whispers about what could be coming out or what is being hidden?
Look, I think you just saw a glimmer when the estate released some of the emails Democrats publicly released this week. Obviously, they're they're not flattering to the president. They implicate his presence with Jeffrey Epstein and victims. So I guess you can only speculate here. The fact is, Jeffrey Epstein was a monster, a sex offender, a human trafficker, a pedophile with a conviction for prostitution, and he got a sweetheart deal. And he was allowed to continue this horrific path. Who helped him? Who looked the other way? I think those who were involved with Jeffrey Epstein in these horrific acts, that's paramount. But who helped him protect this, continue this process? Why wasn't it noted? Why weren't there more investigations? How was he able to finance this without the financial institutions being aware? I think that's just the beginning of what we're going to learn. And from my point of view, we need to let the chips fall where they may. To me, it doesn't matter if these folks are Democrats or Republicans. Justice has to come finally for his victims.
And tomorrow we'll have Republican Congressman Darren LaHood from Peoria on tomorrow's show to talk about this very subject and more. And when we come back, the shocking story of a Chicago woman who gave birth on a highway after getting turned away from a local hospital. And spoiler, this is not the only time this has happened.